Hi, welcome back to my channel and my ranking for the Mad Max franchise. So we've got 5 films to talk about here, spanning all the way back from 1979 until now. And something that makes this film series unique is that it all came from director George Miller, the same creative force all the way through, which is interesting. I'm not sure if there's any other film series like that that's had the same filmmaker still making sequels to his original so long after that movie came out. But these have been so much fun to go through. I have reviewed them all on my channel as well. If you want to hear my particular thoughts on one of the movies, I'll leave some links for you here. And also please do let me know down in the comments section below what you think of this franchise, and do tell me which is your favourite Mad Max movie. Okay, so let's get into this ranking list. Down at the bottom, in number 5, I'm going with Beyond Thunderdome. And I know some people quite enjoy Thunderdome. For me personally, I really didn't like the direction it took after Mad Max 2. I think when you watch those first 2, they have a very particular tone and style about them. They were harsh films. They have a real dark undercurrent running through them and a real apocalyptic feel. And I think something about that was lost in Thunderdome. And I think it starts out fairly interesting, where you've got Max years later as this wanderer. He finds this town, this kind of community which is functioning a lot more. It's kind of established a way of creating energy, and it's got trade and all these kind of things going on. That was an interesting setup, but everything from there goes downhill, I think. When you get to the whole section of Max out in the wilderness and finds that community of children and decides to help them, the tone just really takes a shift, and it doesn't feel like a Mad Max film to me anymore. Just the music choices, the way it's done, I just really started to feel myself checking out from it. And you get to the final act, which is the best section of the film, but even then, it's basically just a watered down version of the final sequence of The Road Warrior, just without all the violence, so not the stakes, nowhere near as exciting, and something you've already seen before done better. So this for me was an easy pick as the bottom of the list, and it's probably the only one I wouldn't have any interest in rewatching. Number 4 for me is the original, and I actually really enjoy this movie. I think it's got a lot of charm, and I do just enjoy going back to revisit it. I really love apocalyptic stories, so seeing here set in Australia, where you've got society breaking down, it's the last days and the last remnants of law and order, and you've got all of these very feral gangs starting to take over, starting to run things as people fight for these limited resources. There's something interesting about that whole setup that really just pulls me in. And I think all of the action stunt work as well is just amazing. Like what George Miller managed to do with such a limited budget, it really is impressive. It's real edge of your seat action, and you can't help but admire the work that was put in to create such a film. So it really is enjoyable to watch. I think this one is just limited by, as I said, the budget, and it does feel a little bit amateurish in times. Like when I watch this back to back with The Road Warrior, it's hard not to notice what a step up in quality that second movie was. It really just ironed out all the issues with this one, where I think this one, it just isn't edited well. It doesn't have a nice organic flow about it, so it can be a little bit jarring to watch. Where the way certain scenes are put together, the way the story develops, like the fact that it's a revenge thriller, or that's what the plot synopsis says, and that doesn't actually take place until sort of the final 20 minutes or so of the movie. So it just has a strange structure about it. It just doesn't feel anywhere near as polished as The Road Warrior. So you can definitely tell it's a filmmaker earlier in their career with a limited amount of money. But what he manages to do with that is still really impressive, and obviously set up a huge and very successful franchise. So definitely a movie I highly recommend you go back to check out if you've never seen this original, because it really is impressive for what it is. And as I say, I have so much fun going back to rewatch this. Number 3 for me is going to be Fury Road. This will probably be the most controversial pick on the list, just because I know people love this movie to death, and I do really understand why. Rewatching it again the other day, I think it's an incredibly entertaining action film. The stunt work, all of the sequences during the chases are just absolutely astounding. So much amazing design work into the vehicles and how the sort of fight scenes play out and everything. It really is just complete insanity for 2 hours, and I love it for that. You know, when you're in the right mood for it, no film can beat Fury Road. And people do talk about it as being one of the greatest action films of all time, and I just can't talk about it on that level, because for me it's just too thin on the plot in terms of the story development, the character development, everything like that. When I think about my favourite action films of all time, I think about Terminator, Terminator 2, Alien, stuff like that, where those movies have the action but they also have a much deeper character story. You know, they have more going on, there's more depth to them, there's more themes being tackled with, and they're the movies that will stay with me longer, whereas this for me is just an amazing piece of entertainment. So it isn't quite on that level for me, but don't get me wrong, I do understand why people love this one, and there's a lot of great things to say about it. I will definitely go back and watch it again, but just something about the top 2 movies on this list just gel with me a little bit better than Fury Road. My number 2 choice is going to be the new film Furiosa, and it's actually such a shame to see that this isn't doing so well at the box office, because this is a really solid action movie. I thought it was a great addition to the franchise, and it actually really surprised me by how good it was. I had such a good time watching it, and I don't know whether it's just the fact that people have kind of lost interest. Maybe it's the fact that we're not following Max here and it's a prequel story. Maybe it's just been too long since Fury Road, I'm not sure. But this movie definitely deserves more success, because it really is a decent action film. It really is impressive. And I think I liked the fact that it was telling this backstory for Furiosa, and you know, some people will say that prequels, they tell you things you're not interested in seeing because you know where it's going to go and whatnot. But because I do think that Fury Road is a little bit shallow on the plot, I was happy to get more information here. You know, Furiosa's backstory, the most interesting character we've had yet, to see how she got to be the person that she became in Fury Road, understanding more about these communities and how they work with each other in the wasteland, seeing more details about characters like Immortan Joe, like all these interesting things that Fury Road set up and never explored, and they do so here, so I was really gripped by it. And this one is definitely scaled back in terms of the action. There's nowhere near as much as Fury Road, but for me personally, because the characters are developed better here, because there is more story to get yourself into, I personally felt like the action had more impact. Like I was more excited for it when it came, because you cared more about the situation, what was going on, the stakes for these characters. So I really enjoyed this, and I really do hope more people go out to see this. And again, if you've enjoyed the Mad Max films, there is no reason why you won't have a great time with this one. It's a very, very solid action film, and I think it's going to be one of the better releases we're going to get in 2024, so definitely go out and watch this. And my number 1 choice, of course, has to be The Road Warrior. And I absolutely love this movie. It's one of the best action films of the 80s, I think, and I always have so much fun revisiting this. And whilst I will say it's not actually a huge jump up from Furiosa for me, I don't think, but the few issues I have with Furiosa are just simply aren't present here in The Road Warrior. Like, one of the things being the bloated runtime of Furiosa. You know, it's a 2.5 hour film, whereas I feel like a hardcore action movie that's tightly paced, it just suits, you know, the 90-minute runtime, it just suits a movie like this far more. So, you know, Road Warrior is just a more enjoyable experience for me. I'm more likely to go back and rewatch this. And the other big thing as well for me is it using purely practical effects. You know, the later films start to get a little bit heavy with the CGI for me. You know, some of the scenes start to look a bit shiny. You can tell that there's green screen stuff going on. There's moments where you can tell characters aren't actually doing what they're doing in the film, whereas back in the early 80s and, you know, in The Road Warrior, if you wanted to see somebody jumping off a car 100 miles an hour, whatever it was, you know, you had to do this stuff for real. It's a real miracle that nobody was actually killed filming this, but I find it just really immerses me in the action when you know the stunts, the choreography, when you just know that everything is real. It just makes it all the more gripping and entertaining for me. So, you know, that final chase scene in The Road Warrior is just outstanding. And I do think as well, just from the point of view of the characters as well, following Max, I think Mel Gibson does a much better job here than in the original. And even though he is a man of few words, I do just think the small character moments he gets in this really do hit. Like his relationship that develops with the autogyro pilot, the terms they leave on at the end compared to the start is interesting. And just the character arc he has of originally being this lone survivor, this man that doesn't care about anything as long as he's staying alive, I guess. Just kind of cold after the events of the first film, and here kind of learning to appreciate the fact that you'll get more fulfillment out of helping people, realising that might be his calling sort of thing. So I really like that development for the character. It was the right way to go. And overall, just as an experience, it just works. It's just such an entertaining, fantastic action movie. And I don't think it's perfect. You know, it's not one of my favourite movies. It's not perfect. There are things about it which can be improved on. Again, I do touch on all of these things in my review as well. But in terms of an action movie from that era in the 80s, and just watching all these again in close succession, this is the one that stands out to me. This is the one that I'm going to go back and revisit before any of the others in the Mad Max franchise. So that's what puts it for me at the top of this list. So that, guys, is my ranking for the Mad Max films. Please do let me know all of your thoughts in the comments down below. Really hope you enjoyed this video. And also, please do consider subscribing to the channel if you have been enjoying my content. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.